Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bet Right Sports Betting Podcast presented by the Six Pack Coverage Media Network. It's your host, Jeff Farrell. Here's my co-host, Andrew Tanzi, coming at you to break down everything you need to know for divisional weekend of the NFL. We are coming off a fantastic games in the wild card slate. Looking forward to getting one step closer to crowning a Super Bowl champion in the year 2023. How did wild card weekend treat you?
Whew. About as good as the second half treated the Chargers on Saturday night. Not too good. I was definitely on the wrong side of some of these games. Dead wrong on Monday night, my read on the Bucs game, but
You and me
yeah,
both.
not a great start to the playoffs from a betting perspective, but some pretty exciting games sprinkled in there, so can't be mad about that.
Yep, couldn't agree more. It was a similar weekend for me. I feel like in terms of just like bets, I probably won and lost about the same amount, but every time I had a big bet down, it completely lost. Like the Dolphins team total under, the Ravens team total, all the things I got ahead of and beat the market on, the Bills minus 9.5, none of them came home. And then the ones that like I just bet at normal numbers, like the Giants and the Jaguars, those won. So it was very frustrating from that perspective.
Yeah.
Debate of the week. Nothing new here. Jeff just taking another winner in quite a roller coaster of a game. You had the Chargers -2. I had the Jags +2. So I go to 7-2 in our debates of the year. At what point did you think this game was over, or were you never fully sold that the Chargers were going to wrap it up?
No, so it was like, it was 27-0 right before the half, and you're like, okay, heading into half, if it's 27-0, it's one of those like maybe you can go to bed type things. But the
I went to bed at
Jaguars,
27-0.
yeah,
That's what I did.
so the Jaguars score right before half, and then it's just enough like room in there, like a 20-point lead. You're like, okay, it's not impossible. So then it's like, all right, you got to stick out the second half, and then you just see it trending in the wrong direction. It's like you're just waiting. The Chargers just needed one drive, get one more
Yeah.
field goal. There was a couple drives towards the end where you're just like, just get a first down or two, and they just couldn't find a way. And the end result is a loss, and Joe Lombardi ends up taking the brunt of it by getting fired this week.
Yeah, I'm not sure he should have been the only one that got fired, but at least they made some
Yes.
kind of change because they definitely need a new offensive coordinator. The amount of weapons on that offense and what he's getting out of them or not getting out of them, like
Yeah.
get out of here.
Well, he didn't have one of his main weapons because
Well,
Brandon
yeah, that
Staley
part of that
decided
wasn't
to
his
go.
fault,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
coach screwed him over there. Favorite bets of the week. Unfortunately, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers took down both of us in different ways. You had the Bucs at +3, moved to 9-9 on the year. I had the Bucs and Bengals paired in a 6-point teaser, so they also got me too. Couldn't even cover the 8.5, so I go to 8-9 in my favorite bets of the week. I guess the only good thing that we can say is that we can't possibly lose any more money on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this season.
Yeah. So what did they play? 18 total games this year. I think I lost money on all 18 of them somehow.
I
Whether
mean,
I
what
was
they
betting,
cover like 2 games this entire season.
even when and the two they covered, I probably bet against them.
Probably.
Couldn't figure the Bucks out all season.
Yeah, mercilessly, that one will come to an end until next year. We'll see if Tom Brady's back or not.
Yeah.
Long shots of the week. You took a loss with the Minnesota Vikings money line and Justin Jefferson, 100 receiving yards, dropping to 4-14 on the year. It looked pretty damn good through one drive. The Vikings went right up and down the field, scored. Jefferson had like 3 catches for 40 yards, and then he goes invisible. The Vikings defense implodes. Like, I don't know what the heck happened, but you were looking good for a few minutes.
Yeah, I think that entire game really shifted on that. I guess it was a third down play where they did what was it, like a receiver pass or some crazy trick play the Vikings did on like 3rd and 1 instead of just quarterback sneaking or a safe play to get the first down. They end up, that to me was the turning point. It was in the first half, but you just had no confidence in the Vikings defense to get stops the entire game, and kudos to the Giants defense for taking away Justin Jefferson after the first drive.
Yeah, they really did a good job shutting him down and trying to make other guys beat him. And I mean, TJ Hawkinson had a good game, but I think you'd take that over having Jefferson over the top. So it made sense.
And then Kirk Cousins caps it off by throwing a 3-yard pass on 4th and 8, which is just inexplicable to me.
Yeah. He did. I saw like an interview of him where he was trying to explain what was happening on the play. He was supposed to go to Jefferson, but he saw the safety over the top, so he just tried to get rid of the ball because he knew the pressure was coming. So like, I don't know, maybe he didn't really have anywhere else to go. I'd have to look back at it closer, but I mean, I feel like throwing a jump ball to Justin Jefferson in double coverage is still better than throwing a 3-yard pass to TJ Hawkinson on 4th and 8. So
yeah, and look, like Kirk Cousins was not the reason they lost that game. I mean, he was
played
awesome.
fine.
He
Yeah,
completed like 80% of his passes, a couple touchdowns, almost 300 yards. So absolutely not on Kirk Cousins, despite the last play of the game. That was solely on the defense.
I would agree. I did get a win in that game. Saquon Barkley, 2 touchdowns on the game. The Giants money line. I only had him for 1 touchdown, but he did get in the end zone twice. So I am up to 6-9 on my long shots of the year. I've
Pretty
hit
good.
3 of my last 4. There's whispers out there that my new nickname is going to be Lord of the Long Shot. I don't know if you approve of that, but that's what the people
Haven't
are
heard
saying.
that yet. Haven't heard that one.
Maybe a couple more winners and I'll get there.
Yeah.
Prop sheet, unfortunate week for us, 3-4 on the week, so lost a little bit of money. Keenan Allen, 13 targets, somehow only finished with 6 catches. CeeDee Lamb missed by 5 yards. And then the San Francisco 49ers, I think they averaged like 19 yards per play when anyone on the offense touched the ball outside of Elijah Mitchell, who went backwards more than he went forwards. I think he averaged like 0.1 yards per carry. So that one was pretty painful, especially because you were on CMC and we ended up putting Elijah on the prop sheet and not CMC. And that was the real easy play.
Yeah, CMC ended up getting pretty high up there from when we recorded on the podcast. And I Mitchell, like it was one of those games. I think I said going in, they'd rush for like 170 yards total against the Seahawks in the first 2 matchups. So you expected there to be a ton of yards to go around, and there was, but just not for Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah, and the touches were pretty split. I mean, he got 10 or 11 carries. He just literally couldn't do anything with them. It was very painful.
Yeah.
So better days for the prop sheet. All right, let's go to our hero of the week from Wild Card Weekend before we start breaking down the divisional round. What do you got?
Yeah, not much for me. I mean, I went with I went with Christian McCaffrey. It started off the weekend nice. It gave me hope going into the rest of the games. But
yeah, we were feeling good after the first game.
So I it was a little dicey at halftime, but I was on the Niners at 9.5. They ended up covering. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey went over his rush yards for me. So my most profitable game of the weekend, thanks to Christian McCaffrey, but didn't lead to a profit overall on the weekend.
Yep, I agree. CMC was awesome. I went with Daniel Jones for my hero of the week for absolutely shredding the Vikings defense. Maybe a lot of that had to do with the Vikings defense themselves and not necessarily Daniel Jones, but first career playoff start on the road in a hostile environment. I think he handled it phenomenally. 301 yards and 2 passing touchdowns through the air, another 78 yards on the ground. He was basically the running back 1 and quarterback 1 at the same time. Giants offense puts up 31 points, cashes the +3, the money line, and my long shot of the week with the Saquon touchdown. So thank you, Daniel Jones. 0 of the week for you.
Yeah, I'm going with Justin Herbert only because I feel like, rightfully so, Brandon Staley's getting a ton of blame for this loss. Joe Lombardi also getting a ton of blame, obviously got fired. I don't know that I've heard one person point out Justin Herbert, and you made a great point when we were texting about this. If this was like Kirk Cousins or Matt Ryan or anyone else, they would be getting absolutely roasted to no end for blowing this lead. Justin Herbert now in his career in the second half against the spread is 14-32-1.
Wow.
The dude doesn't show up in the second half. He completed less than 60% of his passes against one of the worst secondaries in the NFL. And just like I said, could not get a first down, could not put a drive together in the second half to put this game away. So Justin Herbert, who has not gotten enough of the blame, in my opinion, is my 0 of the week.
And they put up 30 points on offense, but so many of them was just Trevor Lawrence turning the ball.
Yeah.
They would get the ball at the 20-yard line every possession. Like their offense didn't even really do that much without those turnovers. Like they might not even score 20 points in the game.
Yeah, and they settled for what, like 4 field goals or 3 field goals? They like just
4 and they missed one of them or something like that. Yeah,
the offense was not good enough.
Yeah, Brandon Staley can't go for it on 4th downs anymore. He's completely gone the opposite way. Now he just kicks field goals at all costs.
Like, he's kicking field goals in the red zone. I just don't know what the identity of this team is right now, other than being an awful second half team that can't hold a lead.
Apparently that is their identity. My 0 of the week, I went with the broadcasting booth duo of Al Michaels and Tony Dungy. That was probably one of the worst broadcasts I think I've ever heard on the Saturday night game between the Chargers and the Jaguars. Al Michaels sounded like he was being like held against his will to be in the booth and forced to call this game. Tony Dungy provided absolutely nothing. Like the 2-point conversion call, I had to like rewind it like 3 times because I thought I was like watching the wrong thing. He's just like, and Lawrence reaches over and scores, just in the most like normal voice ever. Like nothing happened. And then the final play of the game, they kick a game-winning field goal to cap off one of the greatest comebacks in NFL playoff history. And Al Michaels just can't stop talking about how there's a flag on the field. Then he finds out it's on the defense, and he's like, well, that is unbelievable. There you go. Just like calm, to be like never any enthusiasm or any sort of excitement into the game. It was very, very disappointing for someone that I like a lot. I like Al Michaels, but for whatever reason, this season, he's just been very old, curmudgeon-y, non-exciting old man.
Like you, I think Al Michaels went to sleep and it was 27-0.
I think he put me to sleep. I think that's what it was. I was listening to the broadcast and I just couldn't take it anymore. It was bad though.
I mean, to be fair, he hasn't exactly had the most exciting slate of games throughout the
But he
season.
got one. Like, I get it on a Thursday night football game where it's like
Yeah.
the Titans versus the Texans and the game's over in the second quarter. This was the game. Like, you had no excuses.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Crazy. All right, we ready to break down these 4 divisional games?
Let's do it.
All right, we will start it off on Saturday afternoon. The Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs are 8.5-point home favorites in Arrowhead. The over-under, or the total, is at 52.5. This is a rematch of the Week 10 game. This was a debate of the week for us, a rare win for you, where the Chiefs closed 9.5-point favorites, won the game 27-17. Not a ton of injury notes for the Jaguars. Offensive lineman Brandon Sheriff is on the injury report, but did practice today in a limited fashion. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Mecole Hardman questionable for the Chiefs. Neither of them super important to their game plan. Do you have a bet here on the side or total, Jags and Chiefs?
Yeah, the books are laying it right out there for us to put the Chiefs in a teaser right now, sitting them at 8.5. So that's what I'm going with. You mentioned the first matchup. In that matchup, the Chiefs put up 486 total yards, averaged 7.8 yards per play. They turned the ball over 3 times and still won by double digits. Now I know I think the Jags missed like 2 or 3 field goals in that game. So ultimately
They did.
They probably should have covered, but the Chiefs still pretty much had their way with this defense other than the turnovers. And I just think it's another matchup where the Jags secondary is in for a pretty long day. They're 30th in DVOA, dead last in the league versus tight ends, allowing the 4th most yards to the position, which is obviously a huge mismatch in this one. So I definitely think there are major advantages for the Chiefs, and I do ultimately think they win. The Jags have been a fun story, but they keep I mean, how many games have they just fallen behind by such a wide margin in the first half and had to claw their way back in? It's been numerous games this season. But, that being said, the Jags pass rush should be able to get pressure here. The Chiefs defense is obviously always a massive concern. Now, it's not as bad as the Jaguars, so, that's something to note. But this is a defense that allowed 24 and 28 points to the Denver Broncos in 2 matchups this season, who outside those games broke 20 points just 4 times the whole year. And, somewhat beating a dead horse, the Mahomes and the Chiefs as big favorites, that's still a thing. Like, it's not a spot you really want to back this team. Now, they tend to win those games. They just don't always cover them. And with this defense, the back door will probably be opening at the end of the game. So I'm just going to take the safer route and take the Chiefs in a teaser here. I'd be shocked if the Jags went into Arrowhead here and pulled out this upset. So I feel pretty good about the Chiefs winning, but no play on the spread for me.
I do agree with you. I am definitely betting the Chiefs in teasers. I wouldn't bet the spread right now. I think I'm going to probably try and play the Jags live. Like you kind of said, they've really started slow in a lot of these games, but they have turned it on in the second half and been really good in comeback mode. Some of the games in the second half of the season, they outscored the Titans 13-3 in the second half to wrap up the AFC South in that game in week 18, outscored the Cowboys 33-13 in the second half, and that epic comeback in week 15. We saw it in the Ravens game as well, where they came back and beat them outright when Lamar was still healthy. So I think the Jags in comeback mode is still a pretty good bet here. And Doug Peterson, for obviously it's a good coaching matchup, Doug Peterson and Andy Reid on either side. So I'm not going to say there's like a massive advantage there, but Doug Peterson in his playoff coaching career, 6-1 against the spread, including 6-0 against the spread as a dog. The only loss he has was in 2019. The Eagles closed -2 against the Seattle Seahawks. This was the game where Jadeveon Clowney cheap-shotted Carson Wentz on the second drive of the game, and Josh McCown had to come in. The Eagles were still live in that game, only lost 17-9 to Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. But Doug Peterson's been absolutely nails in the playoffs so far. We saw him, keep his team alive and keep fighting last week to take down the Chargers. So I do think in comeback mode, if the Jags can make some second half adjustments or something like that, if maybe they go down early 7-0, 14-0, I have no problem coming back and playing them and trying to middle, Chiefs -2.5 and maybe Jags +10.5 live, something like that.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
Okay, we're in agreement. Prop looks for you in this one. We do have lines for pretty much all these games, which is nice.
Yeah, going to go to Travis Kelce over 76.5 receiving yards. Like I said, Jags are worst in the league versus tight ends, allowing the 4th most yards to the position. He had 81 yards in the first matchup on only 7 targets, but I think this is a game where he could see double-digit targets. I kind of think he becomes the focal point of the offense here. So Travis Kelce over 76.5 yards. And then this line actually is not posted, but Trevor Lawrence pass attempts Kind of like you said, kind of expecting the Jags to be in a bit of comeback mode here, like they were last week, where he attempted 47 passes. He had 40 in the first matchup between these teams. He was lined at 34.5 last week, so it's probably be somewhere maybe like 35.5 this week.
Just
So
open.
what's it at?
A massive adjustment. It's 39.5.
Okay, disregard everything I just said. That's yeah.
That's
Probably
crazy. It went up by that
yeah.
much.
Yeah, probably too high to take it there. So, well, the thought was there, but okay.
I was with you the whole time, and I just pulled
Yeah.
it up, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah. So,
all right. So pass on Trevor Lawrence. I'm with you on Travis Kelce there. Played that as well. I don't think I have any other ones in this game. The Jaguars passing game is always tough. I feel like Lawrence is going to have success, but it seems like, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, and Zay Joe just kind of trade off who's going to have a big game here and there. So pass all the way around for me.
yeah.
On that. All right, next game up here, the Saturday night game. We have an NFC East divisional battle, part 3. The New York Giants taking on our Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are 7.5-point home favorites. The over-under is 48. The Eagles won the first 2 matchups of the season in this rivalry. The first one pretty easily. The second one, the Giants kind of rested their starters, so not really a great indication here. But injury reports for both teams: Azeez Ojulari, Fabian Moreau, and Julian Love all questionable in this Giants defense. And then for the Eagles, it sounds like Lane Johnson, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and Jalen Hurts are all going to be back in the lineup and ready to go. And then Avonte Maddox and Linval Joseph are questionable. And it is important to note Jalen Hurts was not even given an injury designation for this game, has been practicing in full all week. So it sounds like he is 100% good to go here. Do you have a play on this one, side or total?
Yeah, I love the Eagles. It just all comes down to the matchup in this one. Eagles and teasers is a no-brainer to me. I don't think there's any way they lose this game. I think you just wait. There was a 7 earlier in the week at maybe 1 or 2 books. I'm going to hold out and see if the flat 7 comes back. It's scary to lay 7.5, but I think I'll probably end up doing it if the 7 doesn't come back. I don't want to take anything away from the Giants last week, but you kind of said it earlier. That game was more of just a takeaway of how bad and fraudulent the Vikings were and their defenses. Daniel Jones played incredible, but I got to be honest. There was guys running wide open throughout that game. He didn't make a ton of tough throws. The Vikings couldn't cover Isaiah Hodgins and Darius Slayton and
Richie James.
Yeah, the Vikings ranked just 23rd in pressure rate compared to the Eagles at number 1 overall. Obviously, a massive advantage for the Eagles going against this Giants offensive line that allows the 4th highest pressure rate in the league. On the other side of the ball, the New York Giants defense, which, by the way, was atrocious last week. I know they only allowed 24 points, but I already said Kirk Cousins completed 80% of his passes.
They weren't that terrible. They were
pretty
okay.
bad.
They were okay.
They were ranked 29th in overall DVOA, dead last against the rush, 30th in adjusted line yield. So we're just talking on both sides of the ball, massive advantages in the trenches for the Eagles. They get pressure on the quarterback because they blitz a lot. They blitz at the highest rate in the league. But I think that can get them in trouble against a mobile quarterback like Hurts, who can buy some more time and give the guys on the outside and Dallas Goedert some extra time to get open. And look, the Giants did a great job of taking away Jefferson last week, like I said, but you have a ton more weapons on this offense. Like, you wanted to put 2 guys at A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith's probably one of the best route runners in the league, who's easily going to be able to get open in one-on-one coverage. Then you have Dallas Goedert, who the Giants, by the way, are 2nd worst in DVOA versus the tight end position behind the Jags. And then on the other side of the ball, I think the Giants almost tipped their hand a bit with Daniel Jones. Like, we kind of knew he was a mobile quarterback and could run, but 17 rush attempts last week. I expect the Eagles to have a game plan to limit him on the ground.
They better, yeah.
The Eagles can get pressure with just their front 4, so they can keep the linebackers back there in a position to spy a little bit better. And then you look at the first matchup between these teams. They dominated the Giants 48-22 earlier in the season. I'm not focusing too much on that Week 18 game where the Giants were resting guys. The Eagles were just in there, win the game, get healthy, pretty vanilla game plan. Miles Sanders had a monster game the first time these teams played. So this is just everything in this matchup is advantage towards the Eagles. So this is all birds here for me.
Yeah, I think my initial reaction on this game was kind of leaning towards the Giants with the points, but the more I think about this game, the more I kind of break down the matchup. I agree with pretty much everything you just said. I see advantage matchups all over the field for the Eagles. And like you said, I just think the Eagles' running game is just going to be so critical here. And if they do have to pass, they just have so many good weapons that can win in one-on-one coverage. We know Wink Martindale's going to bring the blitz. He's going to leave his cornerbacks out there one-on-one against Devontae Smith and AJ Brown and Dallas Goedert. And I just think that spells a ton of trouble. And I also think Hurts' legs will be a big factor here that I'll talk about in the prop game. So I think I'm with you. If it gets down to 7, I'm definitely on the Eagles. If not, I think I'll probably just stick with them in teasers. If I had to bet it, I'd lay 7.5. But like you said, I think I want the 7.
Fair enough.
Prop looks for you in this one.
Yeah, you're gonna hate it, but I'm taking Miles Sanders over. I know we've done it a bunch this year. He's at
No,
60,
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, he's at 68.5 rush yards. And look, it's happened a lot this season where the Eagles just refuse to run the ball, but I think he can hit the over 68.5 with 12 to 15 carries. He had 17 for 144 in the first matchup. Already mentioned the Giants are worst in the league versus the rush and DVOA. Massive advantage in terms of adjusted line yards in favor of the Eagles. So love Miles Sanders here. I think that they're going to have to lean on him a little bit. And if they get an early lead, even better, they can kind of use him a lot in the second half. So give me Miles Sanders, which I think this line is like, this should probably be like 75.5, maybe even a little higher.
Well, I have good news for you. It's actually going down. It's down to 66.5 on DraftKings and Caesars right now. So even better. I think my only problem with this game for the Eagles is I like so many overs on their offense that I feel like they can't all hit, but like Dallas Goedert over receiving yards makes a ton of sense. Jalen Hurts over rushing yards is one of my favorite ones. That's at 50.5 right now. He wasn't running a ton last week, but the first matchup he went 7 for 77 and 1 on the ground. And I looked into the Giants defense a little bit. I think they are very susceptible to running quarterbacks. Wink Martindale, we know he blitzes at one of the highest rates in the league, 43%. They also play man coverage on over 40% of plays, which is again one of the highest in the leagues. If you're going to be blitzing, you're going to be playing man coverage. If Jalen Hurts reads that, I think that could lead to a couple really big runs. If Hurts reads a blitz right and he gets out and all the cornerbacks are in man coverage, I think that could be, a couple big spike plays from Hurts on the ground. The Giants also allowed over 50 yards to Justin Fields. Lamar Jackson went for like 80 against them earlier in the season. Already mentioned the Hurts number. So I think you could see a big game from Hurts on the ground. And then Daniel Jones on the other side, don't mind that either. We mentioned 17 carries last week, only 4 for 26 in his first start against the Eagles, and I think they will have more of a game plan there. But if he's going to be seeing the volume, and we think the Giants are likely going to be in catch-up mode, needing to throw the ball, maybe he just gets there based on the number of passing attempts, and that are going to end up breaking down to some runs. So I don't mind that one either. But yeah, definitely a lot of overs on the Eagles offense for me.
All right.
Ready to move on to the Sunday slate?
Yep.
All right, first game up, we have the Cincinnati Bengals against the Buffalo Bills. Bills are 5-point favorites in Buffalo. The over-under is 48.5. This is a rematch of the Week 17 game that obviously ended up getting canceled based on the DeMar Hamlin situation. Jonah Williams, Alex Kappa, both doubtful on this Bengals offensive line, who will join La'el Collins likely on the sideline, as they'll be missing 3 starters from that offensive line group. On the Bills, safety Micah Hyde still out, and then cornerbacks Kaiir Elam and Dane Jackson both questionable for this one. Do you have a play here, Bengals versus Bills?
Is Micah Hyde ruled out? I heard he might come back. Oh, okay.
The report that I saw was that he's not ready to come back for this game versus the Bengals, but he's getting close.
And what's the latest on Eli Apple?
I don't know, actually. I thought that I heard that he returned to the game and was expected to play, but I didn't see him on the injury report that I saw earlier today, so he might not even have a designation.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I mean, look, the Bengals you could argue both of these teams are playing with a little bit of house money right now. The Bengals, for sure, they absolutely should have lost that game. Probably, one of the bigger swing plays in NFL playoff history there, a 14-point swing in the game on that Tyler Huntley just boneheaded play on the goal line. And the Bills, they did what they had to do to win. It wasn't pretty. Letting up 31 points a lot because of turnovers. The defense played well. I mean, from a yards per play perspective,
not really.
Yards, they were really just they allowed under 300 yards, like 4.
Yeah, they also Jalen Waddle also dropped like 3 touchdowns.
I
mean, the second play of the game, he could have had a 70-yard touchdown. I don't think the Bills defense played that well at all, considering they were against Skylar Thompson, and every other play was a delay of game that cost them 5 yards because Mike McDaniel couldn't get the freaking
That was
play
bad.
call in.
That was bad. Oh my God.
Christ.
But yeah, look, the big story is the 3 offensive linemen down for the Bengals. Now we saw them make it to the Super Bowl last year with one of the worst offensive lines in the league. But I think you kind of saw after who was it? Sorry, was it Kappa that went down
Yeah,
last
no,
week? Yeah,
Kappa was already
Kappa was
down.
out. It
Jonah
was
Williams went down.
Jonah Williams. That's who it was.
Yeah.
But you kind of saw the offense shift. Like it was just all quick passes
Yeah.
from Joe Burrow, which I don't think like Burrow needs time back there to let this offense, to let these plays develop and get the big plays downfield to Chase and Higgins. We saw this be a huge detriment to the team last year. Like I know they escaped it in the playoffs, but I don't remember what the exact numbers were, but it was like when Burrow gets sacked 5 or more times, they were like 0-5 or 0-6 or something
Well,
on the
definitely not,
season.
because when he
So,
played the Titans, he was sacked 9 times.
well,
And
yeah,
they still won.
well, that was prior to that game
Are you
because
talking about the regular season? Yeah.
We were both on the Titans in that game, and that was
Oh,
part
yeah.
of the reason. But yeah, look, being down 3 offensive line in this matchup. Now I know like the Bills are missing arguably their best pass rusher, and Von Miller's been out half the season, but there's still a defensive line that can get pressure, and it worries me a little bit that like I expect the Bills to put up points here like they always do. Like we talk about this all the time. Josh Allen looks terrible. They turn the ball over and you somehow look at the scoreboard and they have 35 points or 30 points. So I'm worried about in the second half if the Bengals are down and they're just in this whole pass only mode where the defensive line can just sit on this pass, just play straight pass rush. The Bengals haven't been able to establish a consistent run game with Joe Mixon, but you know, I say all this about the Bengals. I'm very hesitant to lay points with the Bills right now with what
How
we see
can
from
you?
Josh Allen. It's just this turnover issue, the red zone turnovers. It just seems like the same way they find a way to get points, they still find ways to let these teams hang in games. Like the Dolphins had no business being in that game last week, and somehow it ends up being a 3-point game down to the wire. So I'm just going to back the Bills to score points here. Their team totals at 26.5. I think that's a great bet. They've now gone over 30 points in 4 straight games. Despite the 3 turnovers last week, they still scored 34 points. So I think 26.5 is a great number. So I'm just going to run with that. This might be another game where you can look live. This could easily be a back and forth type of game where maybe you get the Bills below a field goal at some point if the Bengals score early, and maybe you can get the Bengals at 6.5 or 7 if the Bills score an early touchdown. So definitely no plays pregame on the spread for me, but I'll go in with the Bills team total.
I am going to jump on the Bengals here. I bet them at +4.5. Obviously, like them at +5 or +5.5 as well. As this one has moved against me a little bit here. I think you kind of mentioned it for me, like the Bengals offensive line. I feel like this is being a little bit blown out of proportion. 2 of the 3 replacement players, I believe, were their starters last season on a team that made it to the Super Bowl. And like I know everyone was saying last year, the Bengals offensive line is so bad, but like they were so bad that Joe Burrow took them to a Super Bowl and they won
still
on the
sucked
road.
though. They still sucked.
Okay, but they sucked so bad that they won in Kansas City and went to the Super Bowl and was like 1 play away from winning the Super Bowl. Like, what else do you want them to do? Like, I get that they weren't great. They still did it. Like, why can't they do it again this year?
You
Everyone
can't
acts
downplay
like
too much.
people are downplaying it way too much. And I hear no one making anything critical about the Bill. I mean, I know you just did, but like everyone I hear talk about this game just like completely dismisses the Bills' performance for the last 6 weeks of the season, where they basically haven't covered other than a game where they had 2 kick returns for a touchdown. Josh Allen keeps turning the ball over, like you said. I think there were some plays the Dolphins offense missed that they could have won that game outright. So for me, this is just way too many points here. I trust Joe Burrow. I trust this Bengals team. I think there's just too many points to lay with the Bills here. So I am on the Bengals. And I also saw that a lot of like the Bengals defensive schemes that Lou Emeril, the defensive coordinator, likes to run is really that too high shell where they keep the safeties back, try and limit explosive plays down the field. And I think that works really well against a quarterback like Josh Allen. You're basically giving him the underneath check down throws, which we know Josh Allen avoids at all costs and is going to try and force the ball into tight windows, force the ball down the field. So I think if they can just use that to frustrate him a little bit, he's going to be forced into some turnovers or make some throws that really aren't there. And I think the Bengals can take advantage of that. And that's just, I think they're going to keep it close. And I wouldn't be surprised if they won the game.
I don't know, man. Like the Bengals have been bailed out the last 2 weeks. They allowed 364 total yards, 386 total yards to an offense led by Anthony Brown and Tyler Huntley. The Ravens were right there in the first game, despite 3 or 4 turnovers by Anthony Brown, and then last week they had the play on the goal line by Tyler Huntley. So the defense hasn't looked great the last couple of weeks against the
Yeah,
Ravens
they're not an amazing defense.
they're
I'm not
probably
saying
one of
they're
the worst
amazing.
offenses in the league with those two quarterbacks. So I don't know. It's not inspiring a ton of confidence. I know the Ravens defense is better than the Bills, but the Bengals weren't able to do anything the last 2 weeks on offense. So
Look, I don't want to
it's a
make
little bit
excuses.
concerning.
I don't want to make excuses for them, but I also feel like a Bengals Ravens game, like just one of those games where like it's in division, the teams know each other. Like Harbaugh is such a good coach. It's almost like I expected that game to like somehow be a back and forth slugfest. It's like Steelers Ravens. Like I don't take too much away from those games and try and transfer it to other matchups because I just know that those teams are going to end up playing close games. I kind of felt that way with the Bengals and Ravens the last 2 weeks. I'm not necessarily being like, oh my God, sound the panic alarms. The Bengals offense can't get going. Like the Ravens defense knows everything they want to do. They have an awesome unit. I wasn't surprised that they had a lot of trouble moving the ball last week.
Yeah, I agree with that to an extent, but you played them 2 weeks in a row and you really didn't make any major adjustments to the second game. And Joe Burrow didn't look good in either game. He wasn't comfortable. He was under pressure last week. He was sacked 4 times. So I don't know. They can't. Mixon is just Mixon's basically a corpse right now. They can't do anything on the ground. Yeah. So all the pressure is going to be on Burrow. I mean, you look at Mixon, 3.5 yards per carry, 2.5, 4.1, 1.9 yards per carry. Like, I mean, there's just no running game to speak of. The lean on. Obviously, the Bills don't have a great running game, but they have Josh Allen who can rush for 80 yards if you need him to. So I don't know. Like I'm definitely weary of laying points with the Bills here, but the line just I don't know. The more I look into it, just doesn't seem wrong to me.
Okay.
So what was the line what was the line on the Monday night when it closed a few weeks ago when they played? It was in Cincinnati.
Bills minus 2.5 in
Bills
Cincinnati.
minus 2.5. Yeah. So now you go home field. You have another injury on the offense. There are two more injuries on the offensive line for the Bengals. So it just seems about right to me.
Okay. It's fine.
All right.
If you had to bet it, what would you bet?
I'd probably bet the Bills.
What, really? Are you serious? You would lay 5 points with the Bills?
No, I wouldn't, but if I had to, if
no, but I mean, I just think this is an obvious take the Bengals if you're going to bet it, if not pass.
I am passing.
Okay, good.
All right. Okay.
We agree. Kind of. All right, what do you have for props in this game? I have a couple.
Yeah, you mentioned the one earlier, but I'll let you do the breakdown. The only one I'm like debating on is Diggs. He seemed to have resurrected a little bit, going over 100 yards the last couple of weeks, but he also had a 50-yard catch in both of those games where he would have gone under his total without them. So he had 9 and 10 targets, so maybe you look like receptions, but I don't know. He's done me dirty too many times this year. I don't know if I'm comfortable going back to him. Other than that, I just have the Josh Allen rush yards play, but I think I'll let you do that breakdown.
Yeah, I felt the same way on Diggs. I was kind of eyeballing it. Like, do I want to jump in? But he's burned me a bunch of times. So I haven't done it yet, but I'm with you. I was kind of looking at it. Josh Allen over rush yards is my favorite play here. I think it's at 40.5 still. He hasn't been running a ton lately, only 20 and 16 the last 2 games. But before that, 41, 77, 47, 20, and 78. He has been a monster on the ground in the postseason, run for at least 50 yards in 5 of his 6 career postseason games, averaging 62 per game. Obviously, this game is going to be a must win. I think it's going to be pretty closely contested, and the Bengals are going to put scoreboard pressure on the Bills. So I think their offense is going to need to keep moving. And I think this number is just way too low for Allen, who had been up to the high 40s even late in the season. So getting it down at 40.5 just seems like a good discount. And then Jamar Chase, I'm going to be looking at his receptions. We don't have a line yet, but I'm thinking over 6.5 at like minus 140, even over 7.5 at plus money, I think would be a good look. He's had at least 7 catches in all 6 games since returning from his hip injury, and 9 games in a row of at least 7 catches. He was 9 for 84 on a team high 12 targets versus the Ravens last week. You already kind of mentioned the Bengals shifted their offensive game plan to a lot of quick passes, and I'm expecting something similar, a lot of screen passes, slant routes to Chase to try and alleviate some of that pressure from Burrow and capitalize on his after catch ability.
Yeah, I like that. I played his receptions last week too, and they do use him in the screen game. Like they'll give him a couple per game, so this should be some easy receptions. So yeah, if we get 6.5, I'll like that.
7.5 plus money?
Maybe. Probably. Because they're gonna have to pass because, like I said, Joe Mixon's not doing anything on the ground.
Yeah, Mixon's basically useless at this point.
Yeah.
All right, anything left to say?
Nope.
Final game of the slate Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. We have the Dallas Cowboys taking on the San Francisco 49ers. Niners are laying 3.5 points at home. The over-under is at 46 here. More secondary injuries for the Cowboys. Safety Jaron Kearse questionable with an MCL sprain. Cornerback Trayvon Mullen also questionable for the Niners. They escaped the Seahawks game relatively healthy. Wide receiver Juwan Jennings was the only major guy popped up on the injury report listed as questionable. What do you have here on this one? Cowboys versus Niners.
Forget everything you've seen from Dallas and Dak over the last 6 weeks or so and just focus on last game. That's the impression I'm getting this week from what I've been hearing about people backing the Cowboys. It just seems like, yeah, okay, the Cowboys dominated on Monday night to a Bucs team that looked like they pretty much quit halfway through that game. But no, look, this is all Niners for me here. I just think, like, if this was a first round, if this was a matchup last week coming off the way that Dallas ended the season, there's a good chance this line was what, 6 maybe? Niners -6. Purdy looked shaky to start the game for sure last week. He definitely missed some throws, probably should have thrown a couple picks, but he really settled in. And, you know, the pass rush, like, I worry about the secondary for San Francisco if the pass rush can't get home. But again, once this defense kind of settles in, we know they're one of the best in the league. More importantly, they're one of the best in the league at forcing turnovers, which has just been Dak's kryptonite throughout the entire season. And defensively for Dallas, we just saw them take a massive dip over the back end of the season. Over the last 5 weeks of the season, they were 18th in overall DVOA, one of the worst defenses against the pass. You just mentioned they had more injury issues in the secondary. So you watch this Niners offense, and it's just like it's scheming guys open all over the field. It just seems like Debo's wide open, Kittle's wide open over the middle of the field. So I think Dallas is going to have major issues from that front. They've been solid against the run, but the passing game of the Niners just opens up the run game, and they just, between Debo and CMC, there's just so many weapons on the ground.
I feel like it doesn't even matter too. Like, the Niners can run the ball on anybody.
Exactly.
Like, the Cowboys have a good run defense. Who cares? The Niners are still going to be able to run the ball.
Yeah, and if you keep hitting this Dallas defensive line in the mouth, like we've seen it a couple times this year, that the Eagles actually did in the first matchup, if you don't let them get those sacks and you just kind of run it right at them, they slow down a little bit, which is a huge deal. And then just to kind of top it off here, you have the Cowboys on the road for the 4th straight week, traveling across the country with a 2-day rest disadvantage. So that's obviously a big factor here as well. So yeah, this is Niners for me. It's always uncomfortable laying 3.5, but I laid 3.5. There was a 3 for a little bit, which I grabbed as well. So yeah, all Niners for me here.
Yeah, couldn't have said better myself. Agree with absolutely everything you said. Also, like the coaching advantage, Kyle Shanahan over Mike McCarthy. Shanahan is 7-1 against the spread all time in the playoffs as a head coach, with his only loss being in the Super Bowl to the Chiefs, a game that they were up 20-10 in the fourth quarter, then had an epic collapse and lost 31-20, as some Kyle Shanahan teams have been known to do in the past. So for me, this one is absolutely all Niners here. Love them on the money line. Played the -3.5. And I also like the over in the game. I'm fine with the Niners team total over 24.5 if you want to go that route, but even just the over 45.5 seems way too low to me. This Niners offense is completely unstoppable right now. They can beat you on the ground. They can beat you through the air. Listen to the amount of points they have scored since Brock Purdy took over as the starting quarterback: 33, 35, 21, 37, 37, 38, 41. They're averaging 34 points per game. And on the defensive side, the Niners are a little bit susceptible through the air. I wouldn't be surprised if Dak and company, CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, Michael Gallup can have some success in the air, like DK Metcalf and Geno did last week. The Cowboys are averaging 28 points per game over the last 5. So I was really expecting this one to be 47.5, maybe even 48, especially with the scoring uptick that we saw in week 1 of the playoffs here. I think the totals average like 55 points across all 6 games in wild card weekend. So getting this under the pretty key number of 47 here is just pretty good value to me. So I love the over, and I also played the Niners team total over as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think you convinced me to take the Niners team total.
I was really looking for a flat 24, but the best I could find was 24.5, and I think -101 on FanDuel, -102.
Okay.
But you could also do like a same game parlay, get it at 22.5 on points bet or something, and pair it with a CMC rush total or whatever if you want to go that route. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I played it. Props for me. I did like CMC total yards, 105.5 was the line. I'm not sure why it dropped so much last week. I think this was like 117 to 119. I feel like it closed. It's a little bit of a tougher matchup, but he finished with 136 total yards on only 17 touches because he rested the back half of the fourth quarter because they didn't even need him. So if you take out the week 18 game where he basically didn't play the second half, he's been over this total in 5 of 6 games with Brock Purdy as a starting quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if he ran for 106 yards on the ground. Then you just have the receiving yards in there as gravy on the top. So for me, getting this anywhere near 100 was pretty good. Good discount on McCaffrey.
Okay.
Any other props for you?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to CeeDee Lamb over 77.5 yards. Didn't hit last week, had 68 yards, but they really didn't need to pass in the fourth quarter at all. You already kind of talked about the Niners defense. The weak spot is the secondary. 3 of the last 4 games. Last week, they allowed 10 for 136 to DK Metcalf, 7 for 153 to Devontae Adams, and they allowed 77 and 76 yards to Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson in the same game. So, so I'm going to CeeDee Lamb over 77.5.
Okay. I don't mind it. All right. Anything left to say on these games before we do long shots and best bets?
Nope.
All right. Long shot of the week. You ready to go first?
Yeah, going to the first game on the slate. Going to go with a Travis Kelce same game parlay. So we're going to go Travis Kelce 100 yards, a touchdown, and a Chiefs win. Already said the Jags are worst in the league versus the tight end position. Kelce had 100+ yards in 6 games this season, scored a touchdown in 7 games this season. He has been on a pretty big touchdown drought right now. He actually has failed to score in 6 straight games, but I really expect him to be
really?
Yeah, but I do expect him to be the focal point of the offense here against the weak Jags defense. So I'll take a shot on him to score. So Kelce, 100 yards, touchdown, and a Chiefs win.
All right. I love it. Bet it while you were talking. My long shot went pretty simple. Going to go with my favorite prop. We're going to ladder it up a little bit. So I went Josh Allen rush yards. You can get the alt over 59.5 on FanDuel at plus 280 right now. Last 2 playoff games, the 2 playoff games from last year, 6 carries for 66 yards and 11 for 68 in those 2 matchups. Also had a 7 for 88 and a 9 for 92 a couple years ago as well. So we know Josh Allen can really have those explosive plays on the ground. I expect, especially if the Bengals are really trying to take away those deep passes, maybe instead of taking some of the check downs, he just takes off and takes it himself in a must-win game that I think the Bills are going to be fully geared up for and do everything they can to try and keep this playoff push going. So give me Josh Allen to get 60 rush yards at plus 280.
All right. I like it.
Favorite bet of the week. Where are you going?
I'm going with the chalkiest chalk play of them all. I'm going with the Eagles Chiefs teaser. I already said every advantage for the Eagles is a massive advantage in the trenches on both sides. Expect them to have a game plan to shut down Daniel Jones on the ground. And again, not to take anything away from the Giants, but I think that performance last week was just a product of the Vikings really just their season coming crashing down and them getting exposed. So, and then the Chiefs, massive advantage against the Jags secondary. Expect Patrick Mahomes to have a field day. I already talked about Kelce. I love him in the matchup. So, Chiefs, safe bet to win the game, maybe not as safe to cover the big number. So tease them under a field goal. Eagles, Chiefs teaser minus 120 odds. Favorite bet of the week.
Love it. I wrote down 2 favorite bets in case you took that one because I figured you would. So I will pivot to my other one here. I'm going to go with the San Francisco 49ers. I am laying the 3.5. I'm not afraid to lay the hook here. I think the Niners are just a better team all over the field. I see matchup advantages on both the offense and the defense. I think Dak Prescott obviously looked incredible last week. I still think he's a turnover-prone quarterback that Nick Bosa can kind of cause into some maybe mistakes here and there. It's big coaching advantage, Kyle Shanahan over Mike McCarthy, and just an amazing spot, like you said, for the Niners. 2 extra days of rest. Cowboys on their 4th straight road game coming across the country to play in San Fran. I think this is that San Fran ended the Cowboys season last year too, right? That was the game where they had the ridiculous play at the end where Dak slid down and then it ran out of time. So maybe some demons there for the Cowboys. But yeah, I just think this one is all Niners for me. I think the spread should be closer to 5.5 or 6. So I will lay it with the Niners as my favorite bet of the week.
All right. I love it.
All
Yeah,
right.
another season and another us riding the Niners in the playoffs.
Man, there's just something about this team that just I just love it. I can't get enough of it.
I bet them to miss the playoffs too before the season, or I bet their win total under because I was expecting Trey Lance all season.
I think I might have done that too. Think of the same thing as it was going to be Trey Lance, and then
And yeah, and you didn't expect the Rams to be as bad as they are.
that ended up being Brock Purdy, and they're just the best team in the league.
Go figure.
All right, so let me ask you this: next week, Eagles and Niners both take care of business. Eagles host the NFC Championship game in Philly. What is your projected point spread, and what would you lean in the betting market, or do you have a thought on that one?
It's I think it's definitely going to come down to how the games go this week in terms of the spread. But right now,
Right, yeah, obviously, if one team wins by 40, yeah,
I feel like I feel like the Niners are going to be being right now are rated as a better team based on the back end of the season. So I think it would be like a pick 'em almost.
Really?
So just cancel out the home field and you basically have a pick 'em between them. And I'd probably take the Eagles. I think I said coming into the playoffs, I'm going to want to fade Brock Purdy at some point, and that might be the time.
Man, that would be such a good game. I don't know what I would do.
It really would be a fun matchup.
Oh yeah, it's tough to make a case for either one of them because they're just so evenly matched, so good teams. Yeah,
I just really think because the Eagles can match them in terms of weapons for the most part.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I just think Jalen Hurts' legs are the X factor. The biggest concern is the Eagles' defense. They've been gashed by the run a little bit this season, but getting the pieces back in the secondary, like C.J. Gardner-Johnson coming back, is huge this week too, obviously. And if they get Avonte Maddox back, that's massive as well. So. Yeah, we'll see. That'll be exciting though.
Yeah, hopefully we get that matchup just for I don't even know if I'm gonna have a bet on it, but just to watch that football game.
Eagles Dallas would be fun too, to be honest with you.
It would be, yeah. But I would lose a lot of money if Dallas won this week. So I hope that doesn't happen.
yeah.
Keep it as Eagles Niners, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
All right. Anything left to say before we get out of here?
Nope. We got 2 podcasts left for the season. Oof. Time flies.
Sad.
Yep.
Time flies, that's for sure. All right. Hope everyone out there has a fantastic divisional playoff round this weekend. Twitter handle is @BetRightPod. Make sure to give us a follow. We also post this video on YouTube. Smash the like button on YouTube from Jeff and Rue. We are the Bet Right Sports Betting Podcast because every time you bet with us, you bet right.